hundreds of miles of saltwater canals and waterways, extremely low crime rates, exciting new commercial developments, incredible parks and preserves. There are a lot of wonderful things that are drawing people to the city of Cape Coral, Florida, and certainly those are among the reasons that Cape Coral has been consistently rated one of the top places in the entire country to live or to move to in recent years. So what's the catch? Hi there, my name is Dustin Guthrie and I live right here in the city of Cape Coral, Florida with my wife and our 3 little kids. And I've also been a full-time real estate broker here in Cape Coral for almost 20 years now, so I've worked with my fair share of folks that have moved here to Cape Coral from outside of the area. But I've also worked with a fair number of folks that have sold their property and moved away from the city of Cape Coral for various reasons. And so today's video is going to be all about those reasons. I'm going to give you some of the top reasons that some folks maybe regretted moving to the city of Cape Coral. If you're considering a move down here to Cape Coral, you're going to want to stick around for this video because I'm going to give you a lot of the raw, unfiltered truth that maybe some of the folks in my industry are not going to always be running and shouting from the hills. So make sure you stick around. By the way, I do one of these videos every single week, so make sure you're subscribed. If you are considering a move to Southwest Florida, I would love to hear from you. My contact information is right there on the screen. You can call, text, or email me anytime. It's also down in the description of this video, so I would love to hear from you. But with that being said, let's get right into these reasons that some people regret moving to the city of Cape Coral, Florida. All right, so let's start off with the traffic issue in the city of Cape Coral, Florida. By the way, I want to invite you to use the comment section down there if you have any questions or comments for anything that I cover in today's video. I review all of those personally and I try to respond to every legitimate question or comment down there that comes in. If you have a legitimate question or a comment, please leave it down there and I'll be sure to respond to you. But traffic-wise, it's no secret that our population has increased dramatically here in the city of Cape Coral, particularly in the last few years. The 2020 census had our population at right under 200,000, and depending on what source you look at these days, we've got a population of anywhere between 220,000 and 235,000. So our population has increased almost 20% just in the last 4.5 years. So that's a pretty dramatic increase in population for an area of our size here in Cape Coral. And certainly the city does what it can to keep up with that road infrastructure, with that population increase. We've got some main road widening projects. They just finished the Burnt Store widening project, Burnt Store Road, up there in the northwest. But it can get a little bit congested, particularly in the winter and spring months when our snowbird population increases our overall population by anywhere from 20 to 30%. So those roads can get a little bit congested, particularly in the mornings and the afternoons during rush hour. In fact, the study just came out earlier this year that placed Cape Coral as the 3rd worst commuter city in the state of Florida. I think we were 27th over the entire country, pegged our average commuter time of about 59 minutes. Now that's round trip, so that's in the morning and the afternoon. And a big reason for that is a lot of the folks that live here in Cape Coral work in Fort Myers, so they've got to go over those bridges, and those bridges can kind of get to be a choke point during times of heavy traffic, or if in the cases where there's maybe an accident on them or something like that. So that definitely increases the time that you're going to be sitting in traffic in here, and certainly the main roads are going to get a little bit congested from time to time. Pine Island Road, Cape Coral Parkway, Del Prado Boulevard, all of those can get fairly backed up at times. So just be aware, one of the big complaints I hear from folks that are moving out of the area is that traffic's gotten a little crazy these days. Okay, let's talk about city utilities and the assessments that come along with them. It never really ceases to surprise me how many people who are thinking of moving to Cape Coral don't yet know about the utility extension project and the assessments that come along with those. So let's get into those. Basically, the same population increases, the same rapid population increases that are causing a strain on all our roadways and our traffic infrastructure are also posing a strain on our city's central utilities. Basically, what I'm talking about is central water and central sewer systems. And if you've been shopping for Cape Coral properties, you've noticed that some of the least expensive properties in the entire city tend to be in the northeast and northwest sections of Cape Coral. And one of the main reasons for that is because those areas don't yet have the central utilities yet. They don't have central water and central sewer up there. Basically, the homes that are up there are on well systems and septic systems. And I actually covered those well systems and septic systems in a video a few months ago. So if you'd like to go to my channel and learn a little bit about those systems, hop over to the channel and check that out. But basically the situation is the city is rapidly expanding the central utility infrastructure into those areas. And so you can go to the city's website, you can see what the map of that looks like and what the schedule looks like for those areas to receive those central utilities. But basically, when that happens, the city's going to go in there, the city's contractors are going to go in there, and they're going to yank up the roads and put literally those pipes in. And what they put in are central water lines, potable lines that go to your shower and your kitchen faucets, bathroom faucets, things like that. And then they're also going to put in a reclaimed water line which feeds your irrigation. So if you're going to water your grass or something like that, you can water it with reclaimed water versus the potable water that's on a meter. So it saves you a little money there. And then of course they're also putting the sewer lines in. Now when that happens, again, those contractors tear up the road, so it's a little bit inconvenient for the folks that live there for a while. But then on top of that, not only do you have to pay a contractor to physically hook your individual home up to those central utility lines and retire your old septic system, but you're also going to get hit with an assessment balance from the city. And those assessments right now are somewhere around $33,000. Now, you don't have to pay that all at once, and certainly some people do. About 4% of the folks are paying those off all at once right now, but you can also amortize, basically get a loan for that amount over the course of either 20, 25, or 30 years. Now, you got to pay interest on that, and that's going to be included into your tax bill if you choose that option. But that's going to add, as much as $300 a month onto your mortgage payment, or $3,600 per year onto your tax bill if you choose the 30-year option. And that's not an insignificant amount of money. So if you're somebody looking at moving to Cape Coral, and maybe you're looking at the Northeast or the Northwest, you need to just make sure you take a look at that map and make sure you plan accordingly. Now, if you've got a good realtor, of course, they're going to help you to strategize and choose the location that's best going to fit your personal needs and the future plans that you have here in Cape Coral. But it's something to keep in mind. I mean, that's not a small amount of money to get hit with. And especially the folks that have moved here that have not been told about that, when they get that bill, it's a pretty significant expense for those folks. So it's definitely something that you need to watch out for, and you need to plan accordingly. Now, if you're in the Southeast or the Southwest, those areas already have that central water and sewer in. Now, some of those locations, they maybe got it 15 or so years ago, and so some of those areas, some of the homes are still paying that off on their tax bill every year. So you can check that out on the city's website anytime. If you're shopping a particular property, you can look it up, and they'll show you what the approximate balance is, if there is any, left on the utility assessments for that particular property. But it's something to keep in mind. Now, the flip side of that is when those central utilities do come into that area, generally the property values go up over in excess, basically, of the amount of the utility assessment. So your property value will at least go up at as much or more than you're getting hit with that utility assessment. But of course, that doesn't always help you out with day-to-day payments on your tax bill or your mortgage payment every single month. So central utilities is something to keep track of, and that's one of the reasons people may regret moving to the city of Cape Coral. All right, let's talk about property taxes here in the city of Cape Coral. Actually, our tax bills, percentage-wise, are fairly low, but it doesn't cease to surprise me, the folks that are coming down from up north and are kind of blown away at how high the tax bills are here. And it's not, again, because the percentage or the millage rate is so high. It's mainly because our values are so high here. And of course, your tax bill is based on the assessed value of your property. So maybe if you're somebody that's owned a home for 20 years in a place like Michigan or Indiana, where you paid a considerably less, maybe $100,000 or something for that property 20 years ago, and then you've had the benefits of having that assessed value capped every year because maybe it was your primary residence up there in a northern state. And then you come down here and you spend an average cost on a house down here, which is somewhere around a little bit less than $400,000. Actually, our median price here in the city of Cape Coral last month was about $375,000, which is below the national average. But if you're buying something, especially like on a Gulf Access canal, that can get up into $1 million or more dollars, and your taxable assessed value is going to be pretty comparable to that. So a really good rule of thumb to use here in the city of Cape Coral is about anywhere from 1.25% to 1.5% of the purchase price. So if you're looking at a home and maybe you're spending $400,000 on that house, your taxable amount is going to be a little bit less than that, and your overall tax bill for the year is probably going to be somewhere in the mid 5,000s. So that may be a little bit more than you're used to paying if you're in an up north state and you've again had that benefit of having 20 years of that capped taxable assessed value up there. So now there's certainly exemptions to be had here, like a homestead exemption that's going to whittle that amount down, and that's where that lower percentage of 1.25% comes into play. But you just need to be aware of what that taxable value is going to be based on your purchase price and how much you can expect to pay. And actually the Lee County Property Appraiser has a great tool on their website where you can go in there, punch in the address of the property you're looking at, put in that purchase price that you're expecting to pay for that property, and it'll give you a pretty good accurate estimate of what your tax bill is going to look like on that. Now, if we're talking about taxes as a whole here in the state of Florida, remember, we don't have a state income tax. And if you look at this chart, we're actually rated as the 4th best state in the entire United States when it comes to total tax burden. Just over 6% of annual income here can be expected to pay towards the state taxes. So we don't have a state income tax. A lot of our state taxable income comes from things like tourism and things like that. So if you're living here in the state of Florida, your overall tax burden is going to be fairly low. But again, your property taxes might be a little bit higher than you're used to paying because, again, you're coming down here and paying a little bit higher values because, again, the population increases and the demand that's on coastal Florida, our property values have gone up considerably in the last few years. So it's just something to be aware of. Make sure you know what you're getting into when it comes to the taxes you can expect to pay on your new property here in the city of Cape Coral. But that's one of the reasons that some people regret moving to the city of Cape Coral. So it's really no secret that we here in the state of Florida have to contend with our fair share of storms, and certainly coastal Southwest Florida and Cape Coral is no different. You know, we went through Hurricane Ian a couple years ago, which was a Category 5 hurricane, and that was the first hurricane that we kind of got touched with in a few years there. We had Hurricane Irma before that, but it didn't really do the damage that Hurricane Ian did. But really, our insurance rates all over the state of Florida have gone up considerably in the last few years. And we generally have to contend with 2 different types of insurance here in the city of Cape Coral, depending on where you're at. We've got, of course, your homeowner's insurance, which includes windstorm coverage for hurricanes and things like that. It also includes coverage for fire, theft, tornadoes, anything else like that, sort of a catch-all. But we also contend with separate insurance policies for flood insurance. And if you're living in a property that's located in a flood zone, especially if you have a mortgage on that house, you're going to be required to carry flood insurance separately from that homeowner's insurance policy. So it's important to know what you're getting into when it comes to insurance here. Now, the flood insurance, we had some changes made. FEMA made some changes to the map and a few other things on how they determine flood insurance policy rates a few years ago. It was actually in October of 2021. And when they made those changes, our flood insurance rates really went up quite a bit here in the city of Cape Coral and really all over the state of Florida. So especially for older properties that are in lower lying areas, you can see some pretty expensive flood insurance policies. So you need to make sure that you know what you're getting into when you're shopping for a property here in the city of Cape Coral. And there's not really too much you can do to a property to alleviate those flood insurance rates other than just shopping those policies every single year and trying to find some competitive, maybe private insurers that'll give you a little bit better flood insurance rate. But when it comes to the homeowner's insurance, there are some things you can do. And when you go to buy a house here in the city of Cape Coral, part of what I recommend is obviously you get a home inspection during your due diligence period right after you contract on the property. And part of that due diligence is getting what's called a wind mitigation survey. And basically that's something that the inspector is going to do for you. It's going to give you a piece of paper, and it's going to show the insurance company what sorts of windstorm protections you have on that house. So maybe there's a brand new metal roof on it, you get some discounts on your homeowner's insurance for that. Maybe you've got some accordion shutters that go over the windows and doors, you're going to get some discounts for that. Even better, maybe your the home you're looking at has hurricane impact windows and doors, you're going to get the most discounts for something like that. So if you get a lot of those discounts on it, that homeowner's insurance rate can get down even below $2,000 a year in some cases, particularly if the property's newer with a newer, upgraded roof and things like impact windows and doors. But homeowner's insurance, you can pretty much plan on average, you're anywhere from maybe $1,500 a year if you've got a newer property with a lot of good windstorm coverage on it, up to maybe $5,000 or $6,000 a year if you don't have any windstorm coverage, if you've got just basic windows and doors, if you've got an older, maybe shingle roof, the home itself is a little bit older, things like that. But you need to do your due diligence up front and make sure you know what you're getting into in terms of what your insurance bills are going to look like, both for homeowners and for flood insurance if your property is in a flood zone. Now, if you're not in a flood zone, which most mortgage lenders will not require you to have flood insurance, but oftentimes it's probably a good idea to have that extra coverage in case you do need it. And we do have our fair share of storms down here, and it's just part of life. And fortunately, it seems like they only come around every so often. We haven't had too many big ones in the nearly 20 years that I've lived here in Southwest Florida, and Hurricane Ian was certainly the worst one. So we're hoping that we don't have to go through that again anytime soon. But insurance is one of the reasons that some folks regret moving to the city of Cape Coral and the state of Florida in general. All right, let's talk about the City of Cape Coral's ordinances and code restrictions. We're a municipality, and just like every other municipality out there, we've got our own sets of rules that everyone has to abide by. And these can be a big deal to some folks and not really that big of a deal to other folks, but there are some rules that you should be aware of. And I do hear quite frequently some people complain about the rules and the code restrictions here in the City of Cape Coral. So let's talk about the big ones. And these restrictions govern everything from what and where you can park, to restrictions involving endangered species that we have here, to things like the specific days that you're allowed to water your lawn. So it kind of covers the gamut here, but I'll bring up some of the big ones that I hear. And the first one is just the parking restrictions. An average lot size here in the City of Cape Coral is only 1/4 of an acre, so we don't have very many really large homes here. And typically you'll see garage sizes, only really 2 or maybe 3 spaces is the average garage size here. So a lot of folks like to park their vehicles in the driveway. Well, the City of Cape Coral specifically tells you what you can and cannot park in your driveway. And a couple of the big ones are, number one, you're not allowed to park commercial vehicles in your driveway. So if you're driving a box truck, maybe you work down here as a plumber or something like that, you're not allowed to park that box truck in your driveway. Same goes for larger pickup trucks with maybe a rack on it and some lettering on the side. You're not allowed to park that in your driveway in many cases. The other big one is, of course, we're a pretty large boating community here, and if maybe you're living in a property that's not on the water, but you still like to have your boat and keep it on a trailer, you're not allowed to park that boat in your driveway in front of your house. You have to either put it in the garage or you've got to park it in the back behind your house. And that makes plenty of people a little upset, and I can understand why. It's pretty inconvenient to have to park that boat back there every time you bring it home. So boats are a big one. Another big one is RVs. Of course, we have plenty of folks that like to winter here in the state of Florida, and they bring their RV down. Well, those folks are only allowed to park that RV on their driveway for 72 hours at a time. And if maybe you have some relatives or something coming from out of state, you can park in the driveway, but you got to get a permit for those folks. And those permits only last 10 days. I think you can re-up it for an additional 10 days, but then that's about it. You can only park it for a maximum of 20 days at a time. So It's pretty inconvenient for some of the folks, particularly if you've got relatives that like to come down with their RV for a month or more at a time in the winter or spring here in Southwest Florida. So those are definitely some things you should be aware of. Other big restrictions include how often you can water your grass. You know, the city gives you 2 days a week that you can water your lawn here in the city of Cape Coral, and that's in non-drought conditions. Sometimes if we're in a drought or something like that, they'll take that down to once a week. But basically, it's based on your house number and what that house number ends in. And you can go on the city's website and check that out. It'll tell you exactly what days and what times you're allowed to water your lawn during the week. And sort of related to that is you're not allowed to use certain fertilizers in the summertime during our rainy season. And that one I can really understand because, again, we've got a lot of rainwater that drains off into our canals here, and if you're dumping a bunch of fertilizers into those canals, you can imagine what kind of problems that you can create with things like algae, and you know, that's not good for anyone. It kills fish, it creates breathing hazards, all sorts of things. So that one I can definitely understand, not using certain fertilizers in those rainy months of the summer. Other big restrictions involve our endangered species that we have here in the city of Cape Coral, and I'm specifically talking about bald eagles, gopher tortoises, and burrowing owls. There are restrictions in place on what you can do within a certain radius of those nests, and oftentimes you're not allowed to do any sorts of construction within that certain radius around those nests. So particularly if you've got a bald eagle nearby, there's only certain times out of the year that you're allowed to do certain construction activities within that radius. And if you maybe own a vacant piece of land or something that you intend to build on, and that piece of land has a burrowing owl's nest or a gopher tortoise nest on it, you know, you're going to have to go through a process to mitigate that nest and pay an ecologist to essentially come in and relocate that nest so you can go ahead and build that home on it. So those are important restrictions to keep in mind, particularly if you have an intention of coming here and building a brand new construction home. If you're out there shopping for lots, there's some things you need to watch out for in terms of whether or not those environmental restrictions are in place, and if maybe you've got a nest on your vacant piece of land. So that's something I always, part of my due diligence when I'm shopping for land for folks. So definitely, if you're interested in vacant land, give me a call and we can go through all of that. But those are just some of the restrictions that are in place. You know, I can see both sides of it. On the one hand, the city wants to maintain the city and make it look nice and not let any kind of blight move in. Of course, you don't want to see, you know, homes on your street with a ton of commercial vehicles parked on the yard outside and 4, 5, 6 homes up on blocks. We don't want that in the city of Cape Coral. So I understand that. And on the other hand, I understand the frustrations that some folks have with that because, you know, it's your land and you want to be able to do with it what you would like to do with it. So I can see both sides there, but certainly for some folks, those restrictions are one of the main reasons that people regret moving to the city of Cape Coral. So those are some of the top reasons that people may regret moving to the city of Cape Coral, Florida. And certainly I've left out some more of the obvious ones. Of course, we have hurricanes here in Southwest Florida. And of course, our summertime months can oftentimes get pretty hot and humid. But really, in spite of all of these things, more people are choosing to live here in Southwest Florida and Cape Coral more than ever before. And really, when you think about it, why not? I mean, we've got the sunshine, we've got the beautiful waterfront, we've got the sugar sand beaches nearby, we've got those really warm and sunny winter months here in Cape Coral, Florida. And frankly, the people here in Southwest Florida are really nice and warm for the most part. I mean, most of the folks that we have here are transplants from the Midwest, so we've got that Midwest hospitality in a lot of the folks down here. We really are a paradise here, and like anywhere else, we've got our challenges, and sometimes those challenges can be too much for certain folks, and that's why we do see occasionally people leaving the city of Cape Coral and maybe moving back up north or moving to North Carolina or something like that. But for the majority of people, the pros certainly outweigh the cons here. If you decide that Cape Coral, Florida is the right place for you, I would love it if you would give me the honor of helping you navigate the process of moving to this area and finding the right place for you. And certainly I've been doing that for folks around here for almost 20 years now. And I still work one-on-one personally with every single client. I'm not going to hand you off to an assistant agent like a lot of the other brokers around here will. So I would love to hear from you. Hopefully we get to meet sometime, but until then, make sure you're subscribed so you can see these videos every single week. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next video here in just a few days.
Like and subscribe. Just kidding.